Hello everyone, like, subscribe and share Talk Fanfiction audiobook for next part.
Chapter 1. Year 1500 of the Sea Circle calendar, waters off Sabayati archipelago. The weather was far from pleasant today, with a storm raging across the sea. A naval warship cut through the waves. Report, Lieutenant Commander Michael. A suspicious vessel has been spotted 2 kilometers northeast. No merchant or pirate flags, dimensions far exceeding civilian standards, concealed gun ports along the hull, initial assessment suggests a smuggling ship. Michael lounged lazily on the sofa. Upon hearing the report, he issued his orders: close the distance at full speed, then demand a boarding inspection. All personnel, load your weapons. If they resist, immediately engage in close quarters combat with suppressive fire. Under no circumstances are we to use the ship's artillery. I, Lieutenant Commander Michael. The Marine warrant officer saluted and left to relay the command. Michael gazed out the window at the endless expanse of ocean inside. It was both frustrating and dull. Why, of all worlds, did I end up in One Piece? That's right, Michael was a reincarnator. Worse yet, one unlucky enough to be reincarnated without a system. Perhaps due to some alteration caused by his crossing, his strength, speed and even hockey training progressed at an extraordinary rate. His stamina, in particular, bordered on limitless. Even so, after losing both parents, Michael endured a far from comfortable childhood before finally finding security by enlisting in the Marines. The four seas were turbulent, the Grand Line shrouded in mystery. As a reader, as an outsider, he had adored this epic tale. As a reincarnator, as a pawn in the game, he found this world utterly rotten. The political system was laughably corrupt, with aristocracy and slavery running rampant. Pirates pillaged and plundered across the seas, while gangs oppressed the common folk. Even the Marines were little more than the world government's enforcers, betraying the ideals emblazoned on their coats. The author had painted dreams of passion, camaraderie and adventure onto the pages. Yet the darkness and brutality were tucked away hidden in the shadows. Like now, during a routine patrol near Sabayati archipelago, when he'd stumbled upon this smuggling vessel. The reason he'd forbidden artillery fire was simple: he had no idea whether the cargo aboard was alive. Any seasoned reincarnator knew the most profitable trade on Sabayati was human trafficking. Low cost, low risk, high returns, an investment with limitless gains. With that in mind, Michael rose from the sofa and stepped onto the deck. The performance gap between a smuggling ship and a naval warship was vast. The difference between a wooden sailboat and a steel behemoth represented an entire technological era. Were it not for the myriad supernatural forces in this world, the Marines would have steamrolled the globe 5 times over by now. In just a short while, the warship had closed the distance and pulled alongside the smuggling vessel. Marine soldiers relayed Michael orders through a loudspeaker. Vessel ahead, reduce speed and prepare for boarding. This is a routine Marine inspection. Cooperate immediately. After several repetitions, the ship showed no signs of fleeing or resisting, instead coming to a compliant stop. Michael remained wary. Leaving most of the crew to guard the warship, he led a few dozen soldiers aboard the smuggler vessel. He, honored Marine sir, our ship deals only in legitimate business. We beg your fair judgment. The short man at the forefront spotted Michael and immediately approached with an eerie chuckle, his face, resembling a car crash, oozing with sycophantic flattery. Michael narrowed his eyes slightly. Behind this submissive behavior, he could detect an undercurrent of brazen confidence. What's your name, sir? I'm Jerome, delivering supplies for a pet shop. Delivering for a pet shop? Michael glanced at the group of menacing thugs behind Jerome and said nothing. Legitimacy isn't for you to decide, Michael spoke slowly, pointing at the tightly locked cabin doors. Open all of them. Of course. Right this way, sir. Still wearing that annoying grin and maintaining his submissive posture, Jerome unlocked the cabin. Amid the storm, a bolt of lightning split the sky, illuminating the interior in a flash. The cabin had been converted into a prison, holding hundreds of people segregated by race. Even the usually unflappable Marine soldiers were stunned speechless, and Michael himself couldn't help but widen his eyes. He had raided slave ships before, but never one so brazenly packed, and utterly unafraid of Marine inspection. Jerome, is this what you call a legitimate business? What pet shop takes in this kind of merchandise? He, sir, what's the difference between slaves and pets? Michael didn't answer. Instead, he raised his hand in a signal, and every soldier aboard raised their guns, training them on the nearby crew. But Jerome showed no fear at the barrels pointed his way. Instead, he spoke with unnerving calm. Sir, I'd advise against rash actions. You'll regret it. Regret? Michael lowered his head. I'll never regret arresting scum like you. He, don't be so sure. Jerome's sycophantic smile remained, but a mocking glint flickered in his eyes. You should know, this shipment was commissioned by the Celestial Dragons. The moment those 3 words left Jerome's mouth, hesitation flashed across the faces of every soldier present. Especially that golden-haired prize we caught. The Celestial Dragons will fight over her, bidding will go sky high. Jerome tugged at Michael's marine cape, the word, justice, warping under the strain. How about this? Let us go, and I'll give you 10% of the auction profits. Michael looked into the cabin. The darkness couldn't obscure his vision. He saw the slaves, expressions shift from hope to fury, then finally to despair. 20%. Final offer. Michael's expression twisted before he finally exhaled. Do we have a deal? He, you're a greedy one. But I like working with greedy men. All right, everyone, back to the ship. Michael waved them off. Once the soldiers had retreated, he grinned at Jerome. Got any drinks? To celebrate our partnership. Of course. The finest wine. Then let's have a toast. Michael slicked back his rain-drenched platinum hair. Even slicked tight against his scalp, the style did nothing to diminish his striking looks. He watched silently as the lackeys brought 2 bottles of clearly expensive liquor. Jerome picked one up without hesitation, yanked out the cork and drank heartily. Michael, however, merely took a sip before sighing. His explosive temper flared, then he smashed the bottle against Jerome's forehead, sending shards flying as a cruel smirk curled his lips. Fuck the Celestial Dragons, fuck the world government. Other Marines might be willing to be dogs, but not him. He would not kneel. 18 years in this world, Michael had originally planned to coast through life as a slacker, just surviving until the end. But today, he realized how laughable that idea was. He couldn't turn a blind eye. His humanity wouldn't allow it. And his explosive temper certainly wouldn't either. In that case, it was time to dust off some ancestral skills. Facing celestial dragons whose veins ran with filth and depravity, confronting the corrupt world government and its allied kingdoms. What was he waiting for if not to rebel? Seeing the slave traders around him drop their fawning masks to reveal viciousness in their eyes, Michael smiled in relief. The wine tastes terrible. Michael, sentence all of you to die. A pair of pristine white wings unfurled from his back. Holy light pierced the heavens, scattering the dark clouds. Pure white flames spread across the deck like clinging parasites. 9/6, 4:48 p.m. Ranveer Singh, Chapter 2. 5 years ago, before officially joining the Marine, Michael ate a devil fruit. At the time, he was working on a merchant ship, responsible for guarding the fresh fruit storage. During a rough wave, the towering pile of fruits collapsed. Fortunately, the storage was lined with shock-absorbing padding, so no damage was done. But a pure white apple covered in spiral patterns rolled to his feet. In Michael's mind, a faint yet urgent voice cried out, "Eat it! Eat it!" And he chose to follow his desire, biting into it without hesitation. After an indescribable wave of foulness, he became a devil fruit user. Human fruit, mythical Zoan, model, Seraphim. However, after joining the Marine, when reporting his abilities as a devil fruit user to his superiors, he listed his power as the human fruit, ancient Zoan, winged human form. Aside from flight, he didn't reveal much else about his abilities. But this time, he couldn't hold back his temper. Perhaps he had never learned the art of restraint in this life or the last, or maybe it was simply because his blood, still warm, mingled with holy flames and began to burn fiercely once more. His pure white holy flames consumed 88 men. After cross-referencing the wanted posters, he realized that the few individuals he had noticed upon boarding were, at the very least, scoundrels with bounties of 40 million berries. Couldn't even take one hit. Then you truly deserve to die. The size of a bounty isn't always determined by strength alone. Some pirates receive far higher bounties than their actual power due to their cruelty and bloodlust. High bounties, low strength, such individuals were usually the favorite targets of bounty hunters. The Marine soldiers who witnessed this on the warship couldn't help but gulp and exchange glances. I'd heard rumors that Lieutenant Commander Michael was strong, but this is ridiculous, isn't it? As exaggerated as it seems, isn't it even more absurd that the Lieutenant Commander is only 18 this year? A lot of people were unhappy about him becoming Vice Admiral Mamasagi aide. Well, who'd dare complain now? But these were slaves reserved for the Celestial Dragons. Will we and the Lieutenant Commander really be okay? Though Michael hadn't awakened observation hockey yet, his superhuman physique allowed him to hear every word clearly at this distance. Hey, maggots, what are you muttering about? Get a doctor over here to treat the wounded. Why yes, sir. As the storm-bringing clouds were forcibly dispersed by the holy light, sunlight suddenly bathed the slave ship. Folding his angelic wings, Michael stepped slowly into the now illuminated hull. I am Lieutenant Commander Michael of the Marine Headquarters, stationed at Sabayati Archipelago. You're safe for now. Safe for now, indeed. After all, not all slaves were pitiful civilians, some could be ruthless pirates who had met their downfall. But as Michael ventured deeper, the faint glow from his wings illuminating each cell, he dismissed that assumption. Every slave reserved for the celestial dragons was, without exception, a beautiful woman. Nearly all were defenseless civilians and more than a dozen were clearly noble-born young ladies at first glance. He couldn't help but reflect, why hadn't he specifically asked his superior, Mamasagi, about awakening observation hockey? Relying solely on physical senses was terribly inconvenient. Before reaching the cell at the end of the ship's hold, Michael focused his gaze. In the damp corner, a golden-haired girl covered in wounds trembled uncontrollably, her eyes filled with fear, yet she stubbornly shielded several little girls behind her. Bastards! You scum! This is a crime! Michael rubbed his temples. This captured woman was perhaps a bit too naive. Provoking criminals even after being kidnapped. I'm with the Marines. You're safe now, Michael explained, but the girl emerald green eyes clearly spelled out two words. Bullshit. Left with no choice, Michael spread his seraph wings once more, amplifying the output of his holy light. In an instant, the entire hold was illuminated. The girl finally saw the Marine uniform on the man before her and the other Marines behind him breaking open cells to rescue enslaved women. For the first time, the seagull insignia and the cloak embroidered with justice gave her an unprecedented sense of relief. Big Sister Stella, what's wrong? Seeing the girl eyes roll back as she was about to faint, Michael quickly shattered the cell lock and checked her condition. Wait, what did you call her? Big Sister Stella. Michael took another look at the girl named Stella. No wonder she seemed familiar. Wasn't this the Golden Emperor, Guild Tessero little angel? The one bought right in front of him by a celestial dragon before her untimely death. A background character even in the movie, not particularly memorable. But the living, breathing girl before him now fleshed out that flat image in his mind. Don't worry, Stella just pushed herself too hard protecting you all and the shock finally overwhelmed her. As he spoke, Michael pressed a finger to Stella's forehead. Gentle holy light flowed like water, healing her injuries and fatigue. Holy light to heal, sacred flames to destroy, mercy and slaughter, the dual nature of a seraph. He hadn't yet awakened deeper levels of his devil fruit abilities. As her wounds and exhaustion faded, Stella's tightly furrowed brow gradually relaxed. Marine-san, is Big Sister Stella better now? A little girl asked timidly. She'll be fine, just let her rest now. Michael withdrew his finger and ruffled the girl's hair instead. She protected you all very well. Soothing holy light continued to flow, calming their frayed nerves. Just as Michael said, Stella had shielded these little girls despite her own terror. Effortlessly lifting Stella into his arms, Michael walked out of the cell, the little girls clinging tightly to his coattails as they followed. Report, Commander. Sweep complete. Total of 260 slaves rescued. All captured from near Sabayati Archipelago in the first half of the Grand Line. Good. Take all victims back to the battleship. We'll handle matters once we return to Sabayati. Yes, sir. The reporting officers paused, then continued, there's one more thing. Aside from the other smuggled goods, we also found a chest in the captain quarters. In addition to the stolen money, there were 3 devil fruits inside. Devil fruits? 3. These human traffickers really hit the jackpot. Even Michael was somewhat shocked. How could these traffickers be so lucky? Not only did they capture over 200 female slaves, but they also found 3 devil fruits. If they had succeeded in this operation, it would have been a nearly 1 billion berry deal. A single, relatively low-risk human trafficking operation would have been worth as much as category bounty. 9/6, 4:50 p.m. Ranveer Singh, Chapter 3. Where is this? Slowly opening her eyes, she realized she wasn't lying in the cold, damp hold of a smuggling ship. Instead, she was on a soft bed. Wait, had she been sold while unconscious? Was she now lying on a buyer's bed, about to suffer some unspeakable fate? Struggling to lift her weak and sore body, she searched for something to defend herself with. Unfortunately, she found no weapons, but the effort allowed her to take in her surroundings. A platinum-haired young man sat on the sofa across from the bed, studying her. Bathed in soft light, he looked like a languid deity. At that moment, memories from before she fainted came flooding back. Let me introduce myself. Michael cleared his throat. I'm Marine Headquarters Lieutenant Commander Michael. I found you on a smuggling ship. Yes, I was kidnapped onto that ship. Stella nodded, then suddenly remembered something and asked anxiously. What about the other girls? The other kidnapped girls? I've already verified their identities. Don't worry, once we return to Sabayati Archipelago, I'll have Marine personnel escort each of them home. That's such a relief. Stella exhaled deeply, her body visibly relaxing. Michael found himself increasingly intrigued by this background character who died young in the movie adaptation. She hadn't mentioned her own situation at all. What about you? Where's your home? I can take you back. I don't have one. Stella smiled brightly, without a trace of sorrow. I've been an orphan since childhood. Now I'm a wandering singer, earning money by performing at taverns wherever I go. Michael fell silent. An orphan, a wandering singer, powerless, yet possessing both beauty and talent. On these seas, she was practically the perfect prey. No wonder Jerome, now reduced to ashes by Michael Flames, had called her prime merchandise. If Michael hadn't intervened, she likely would have met the same tragic fate as in the original story. But having encountered her, Michael couldn't just walk away. An orphan, a wanderer, so similar to his own early life. After a long moment of contemplation, Michael curved his lips into a smile, trying to appear as sincere as possible. In that case, would you like to join the Marine? Join the Marine? Stella looked at him as if she hadn't quite understood, confusion written across her face. Are you joking? No, of course not. Michael shook his head, gazing into Stella's emerald green eyes. The world is about to undergo massive changes. The Marine has captured Pirate King Galdi. Roger, from now on, the seas will become even more dangerous. That's why I'm extending this invitation to you. It's too dangerous to travel these seas alone. Seeing the honest expression on the young man's face, Stella found herself nodding almost against her will. Joining the Marine doesn't sound bad. I know you might have questions. Wait, you agree? Of course I agree. Stella pressed her slightly flushed lips together. Safety comes first on the open seas. I'm not stupid. Michael had emphasized the celestial dragon's involvement in his report. Seeing Guillaume's furrowed brows, Michael smirked and said, the leader of the traffickers admitted outright that the celestial dragons had placed an order for the merchandise from them. Given how brazenly he tried to bribe us without a hint of guilt, it's probably true. Damn it, those bloated fools are outright ignoring the law abolishing slavery. Guillaume muttered under her breath before continuing. If they use the word order, that means. It means those so-called human trafficking shops and auctions are already in cahoots with the celestial dragons, Michael finished for her. Given the celestial dragons' habits, they wouldn't stoop to dealing directly with slavers. Most likely, they went through. Michael didn't finish his sentence, but Guillaume knew exactly who he was referring to. Naturally, it was the CP agents and the Marines who groveled at the celestial dragons' feet. Guillaume had always despised such opportunistic glory seekers. About the plan we discussed before, should we put it into action? Michael ventured, seeing that Guillaume's emotions were already stirred. You mean the Sabayati purge plan? Guillaume's brows arched slightly, yet with an effortless grace. Exactly. While the higher-ups want us to turn a blind eye to the pirates on Sabayati archipelago and let them enter the new world to thin their own ranks. They never said we couldn't target other factions, right? The gangs and human traffickers entrenched in Sabayati are far too numerous. And the rot within the Marines is just as bad. 2 years ago, after Michael and Guillaume were reassigned to Sabayati archipelago, he had first proposed this idea. But those 2 years happened to coincide with the Marines' critical pursuit of Galdi. Roger, so the plan was shelved for the time being. Now that Roger had turned himself in, Michael brought it up again. Guillaume nodded slightly, considering for a moment before giving her approval. I agree the plan is feasible, but we'll wait until after Roger execution to begin. But even this answer satisfied Michael. He had waited 2 years, what was another month or so? By the way, regarding the matter of the celestial dragons and the smugglers, you'll need to make a trip to Marineford. Guillaume raised her head, her gaze intense. The issues within the Marines must be brought before Admiral Sengoku. 9/6, 5:11 p.m. Ranveer Singh, Chapter 4. In the world of pirates, the Marine is undoubtedly the fastest and most free in terms of navigation speed and routes. The calm belt, which pirates avoid like the plague, is nothing more than the Marine backyard. They casually stroll through it whenever they please. After joining the Marine, Michael had actually only returned to Marineford a handful of times. He mostly came only for promotions. But each time, he was still awestruck by the Marine headquarters, Marineford. Fleets stretched like forests, buildings towered high. And at the very top, the seagull flag fluttered proudly. Stella stood beside Michael, her emerald green eyes shimmering with awe and excitement. Once ashore, she craned her slender neck, looking around incessantly. Michael, is this the legendary Marine headquarters? What else? Have you ever seen so many warships anywhere else? 3 days had passed since the slave rescue incident. Stella had grown more familiar with Michael, she spoke more freely now. So, where are we headed next? I need to report to the old man. Admiral Sengoku. Then, should I wait for you on the ship? No need. It's good for you to come along and see the world. Michael shrugged. The recruitment period was over. To get Stella specially enlisted into the Marine headquarters, he really needed the old man approval. Sengoku Office, Marineford. Though it was only year 1500 and Sengoku hadn't yet been promoted to Fleet Admiral, he had already been handling the duties of one for years. At the moment, he was reviewing a report on Galdi. Roger. Current physical condition. A soldier entered and announced, "Report, Admiral, Lieutenant Commander Michael has returned." "Oh, let him in." "Yes, sir." Shortly after, Michael walked into the office with Stella in tow. He casually took a seat on the sofa, not disturbing Sengoku. When Sengoku finally set down the report and looked up, he noticed the beautiful girl sitting beside Michael. She sat composedly, showing no trace of unease despite being in the office of a Marine Fleet Admiral. Her emerald green eyes gazed at him with curiosity. "Michael, Zoan has already filled me in on the whole incident." Sengoku looked at the unassuming Michael. "Why the sudden change? No more slacking off. Quote. Even slacking off gets old after a while." Michael twitched his lips. The old man really had time to spare. Deliberately teasing him. So what if he slacked off a bit too much usually? "I fully support killing slave traders." Sengoku sighed as he looked at Michael. "But the celestial dragons did demand punishment for you, though Fleet Admiral Kong and I managed to block it. HMPH, those filthy pigs better not push their luck with me." "Alright, let's leave the slave ship matter at that." Sengoku pointed at Stella, who had been sitting quietly. "And this is Stella, one of the rescued. She's a wandering singer with no fixed home." Michael stood up and approached Sengoku's desk. "I think she has potential. Old man, can we get her specially enlisted into the Marine?" "Special enlistment? No problem." Sengoku shrugged. "But you'll have to train her yourself. There's no recruit training camp outside the recruitment season." "That's fine by me." Michael chuckled with a grin. He already had plans in mind for Stella. "Old man, one more thing, I'd like to borrow the Marine Devil Fruit Encyclopedia. Come to think of it, all the contraband money seized from the smuggling ship had been confiscated. But when it came to devil fruits, the Marine rule was always that the captors got first pick, with the remainder being handed over and converted into bonuses." Although Michael was a reincarnator, he couldn't possibly know the appearance of every devil fruit. "Granted." Sengoku casually picked up a piece of paper from the side and stamped it with his seal before handing it to Michael. With that stamped paper, the librarian would allow access to the Devil Fruit Encyclopedia. "Alright, is there anything else? If not, I'll take my leave." "Wait." As Michael turned to leave, Sengoku raised his hand to stop him. "For now, you and Stella should stay in Marineford." Michael frowned. 5 years ago, he had been specially recruited by the Marine. To be precise, he was picked up by Sengoku. As an orphan adrift at sea, he had wandered into the calm belt, endured many hardships and was eventually brought back to Marine headquarters by Sengoku. In this world, it was Sengoku who had given Michael the warmth of a home. That was why he could boldly call the Marine most powerful figure, Old Man. However, ever since becoming Zoan adjutant, he rarely returned home to stay. Stella, one of the rescued. She's a wandering singer with no fixed home. Michael stood up and approached Sengoku's desk. "I think she has potential. Old man, can we get her specially enlisted into the Marine?" "Special enlistment? No problem." Sengoku shrugged. "But you'll have to train her yourself. There's no recruit training camp outside the recruitment season." "That's fine by me." Michael chuckled with a grin. He already had plans in mind for Stella. "Old man, one more thing, I'd like to borrow the Marine Devil Fruit Encyclopedia. Come to think of it, all the contraband money seized from the smuggling ship had been confiscated. But when it came to devil fruits, the Marine rule was always that the captors got first pick, with the remainder being handed over and converted into bonuses." Although Michael was a reincarnator, he couldn't possibly know the appearance of every devil fruit. "Granted." Sengoku casually picked up a piece of paper from the side and stamped it with his seal before handing it to Michael. With that stamped paper, the librarian would allow access to the Devil Fruit Encyclopedia. "Alright, is there anything else? If not, I'll take my leave." "Wait." As Michael turned to leave, Sengoku raised his hand to stop him. "For now, you and Stella should stay in Marineford." Michael frowned. 5 years ago, he had been specially recruited by the Marine. To be precise, he was picked up by Sengoku. As an orphan adrift at sea, he had wandered into the calm belt, endured many hardships and was eventually brought back to Marine headquarters by Sengoku. In this world, it was Sengoku who had given Michael the warmth of a home. That was why he could boldly call the Marine most powerful figure, Old Man. However, ever since becoming Zoan adjutant, he rarely returned home to stay. Is something wrong? The execution date has been set, 10 days from now. Sengoku didn't specify the subject, but Michael knew exactly who he meant. Gall D. Roger. Michael felt a momentary daze. So soon, it's already coming. The so-called Great Pirate Era. Fine, I'll stay at home these days. Michael nodded. It's been a while since I last saw Rocinante, anyway. With that, he waved at Stella and strode out of Sengoku office. Goodbye, Admiral Sengoku. Stella clumsily saluted in the Navy fashion before hurrying after Michael. Not long after they left, a tall, burly figure barged into Sengoku office without so much as a greeting. He walked straight to Sengoku desk and grabbed a rice cracker to munch on. Garp, could you stop eating my crackers next time? Monkey D. Garp, the hero of the Marines, father of the Revolutionary Army leader, future grandfather of the Pirate King and the Marine most unruly, thick-skinned troublemaker. Don't be so stingy, Sengoku. Garp devoured the stolen crackers in 2 bites, then wiped his hands on Sengoku cape silently. Roger condition has deteriorated this badly. Sengoku sighed as he read the detailed report. Why do you think he turned himself in? Garp plopped onto Sengoku's desk. Just to buy his family and crew some time to disappear. What are the odds of finding them? Sengoku, them retiring quietly isn't a bad thing. Garp cut straight to the heart of the matter. Really, Gabon, how many Marines would die if we tried to take down such powerhouses now? Have you thought about that? Garp might be reckless, but he was never stupid. Rayleigh and Gabon aren't the type to stir up trouble. But this bullet, he definitely needs close monitoring. There are still 10 days until the scheduled execution time. Start spreading the news. If the Roger pirates come to rescue him, we'll capture them all in one sweep. Understood. The 2 men in the office discussed the Pirate King execution with such casual indifference before silence fell between them. And in that silence, an era was about to come to an end. 9/8, 1:46 p.m. Ranveer Singh, Chapter 5. After leaving the Marine Headquarters building, Michael and Stella headed straight to the library. Upon entering, Michael handed the slip of paper directly to the librarian. Please wait a moment, Lieutenant Commander Michael, the librarian said before turning to a massive safe. Opening it, they retrieved a hefty tome. You have 30 minutes to review the Devil Fruit Encyclopedia, the librarian stated, handing it over to Michael. Leading Stella to a secluded corner, Michael flipped open the first page of the Devil Fruit Encyclopedia. Meanwhile, Stella set down the bag she had been carrying on the table and opened it. Inside lay 3 devil fruits, resting quietly. Let me see, this purple one shaped like a pear, must be the Paramecia type tone fruit. And this one, found it. It's the Zoan type rat fruit. TCH, doesn't seem very useful. Michael quickly identified 2 of the fruits. But no matter how hard he searched, he couldn't find any information on the last one. He examined the final devil fruit closely. Its appearance resembled a honeydew melon sculpted from clouds. This characteristic, it strongly suggested a Logia-type fruit. Paramecia fruits typically displayed their traits through their appearance, while Zoan types bore distinct animal features. Logia types, however, reflected their elemental attributes. For instance, the flame fruit had fiery edges, while the rumble fruit looked like a spherical lightning bolt. But this fruit could still be a Paramecia. Caught in indecision, Michael weighed the tone fruit against the unknown one. Honestly, the tone Paramecia suited Stellar identity as a wandering singer perfectly. Its potential just felt limited. Stella, which devil fruit do you want to choose? Michael placed the 2 fruits before her. The Paramecia tone fruit, or this possibly Logia type unknown fruit. You pick first. I'll take whichever one you didn't choose. Stella blinked and pushed the offered fruits back toward him. I appreciate the thought. Michael wiped his brow. But I've already eaten 1 devil fruit. Wouldn't eating another grant you a second ability? Good idea, but a person can only consume 1 devil fruit. If you eat a second, Michael didn't finish his sentence, instead miming an explosion with his hands. Realizing her ignorance, Stella lowered her head in thought. Finally, she reached for the unknown fruit. When life presents a crossroads, sometimes you just have to take a gamble, right? With that, she brought it to her mouth. Wait, Michael's eyes widened in alarm, but before he could stop her, Stella took a big bite. That is the most disgusting thing in the world, bar none. Cough. Why didn't you warn me? Stella endured the horrifying taste exploding on her taste buds, her face nearly turning the same color as her eyes from the shock. Yet she forced down the entire devil fruit despite the nausea. Michael wiped away a cold sweat. The fact that only the first bite of a devil fruit was needed. He'd better not tell her that just yet. Just like when Michael had eaten his devil fruit, Stella instantly knew what kind of fruit she had consumed. Michael, we gambled right. I've eaten the cloud fruit. I'm a cloud human now, the dual lower tier fruit of both the ice and rumble fruits. With that, she transformed into a pure white cloud, visually resembling smoke fruit. As for being the lower tier version of the two Logia type fruits, ice and lightning. No mistake there, clouds are essentially aggregates of tiny ice crystals and water droplets. And among cloud types, there's the cumulonimbus, also known as the thundercloud. Dual attributes, though the ice and lightning abilities individually couldn't match their superior counterparts. But with so few Logia-type fruits in existence, this was still an incredibly powerful ability against most enemies. Michael couldn't help but marvel again, that slave trader had some ridiculously good luck, didn't he? Not only did he manage to capture Stella, but out of the 3 devil fruits he had, one was a Logia. Still, are there any downsides to eating a devil fruit? Stella then voiced her doubts. Just enduring a disgusting taste in exchange for power. That sounds too good to be true. Of course, once you eat a devil fruit, the sea will reject you, turning you into a hammer, make you unable to swim, and if your body touches seawater, you will lose your power, leaving you weak and helpless. Oh, then it doesn't matter, Stella said cheerfully. I was already a terrible swimmer anyway. Quote. Wow, you sound really proud of that. After leaving the library, Michael took Stella back to his home in Marineford. To be precise, it was Sengoku's home, also the first place Michael had stayed in for more than a week. A 2-story house with a small courtyard. Pushing open the never-locked gate with practiced ease, memories came flooding back. The 3 years he'd spent in this little courtyard might have been the most relaxed of his entire life. Just as Michael was reminiscing, a window on the 2nd floor suddenly opened. A tall young man, rubbing his bleary eyes, leaned out. Who is it? Coming to push open someone's gate in the middle of the day. Michael, big bro Michael, is that you? The boy rubbed his eyes harder, his weird-looking eyes nearly bulging out of their sockets. Then, with a cheer, he leapt straight down from the 2nd floor window. Hey, Rocinante, long time no see. Michael reached out to pat Rocinante's shoulder but found the guy was now way too tall, settling for his arm instead. Damn, you're over 2 meters now. What the hell have you been eating? Fertilizer. Michael couldn't resist poking fun at his little brother height. And this wasn't even his final height. Rocinante would eventually grow to a staggering 2.9 meters. The human threshold in this world was just absurd. Thinking about it, Michael couldn't help but feel a little bitter. His own 1.88-meter frame was already considered tall among ordinary people. But at Marine headquarters, in this place, those under 6 feet were a dime a dozen, and anyone under 7 feet wasn't worth mentioning. Rocinante had no idea what his brother was thinking, excitedly lifting Michael into the air. Big brother Michael, I thought you wouldn't return until your next promotion. Anyway, welcome home. Michael froze for a moment, the recent gloom weighing on his heart instantly dissipating. Yeah, I'm back. 9/8, 1:49 p.m. Ranveer Singh, Chapter 6. Michael, you've been holed up in your room for 3 days now. Even Stella takes the initiative to train her body. You're the youngest Marine Lieutenant Commander. But do you know what people call you behind your back? The Navy headquarters' most nepotistic officer. At 9 in the morning, just before Sengoku left for work, the scolding began promptly. When college students return home for vacation, parental affection lasts exactly 3 days. The same goes for Marine Lieutenant Commanders. By Michael's 3rd day back, Sengoku had already transitioned from tearful joy and pride to outright annoyance. To make matters worse, Stella was enthusiastically undergoing rookie training on her own, and Rocinante had already begun learning the Rokushiki under the tutelage of the Marines, elite. When there's only one lazy person in the house, that person becomes particularly noticeable. And Michael was that lazy person. When parents forcibly kick them out, they evolve into their next form, a loafer. Thus, with hands in his pockets, Michael found himself wandering near the Marine training grounds. The Marine headquarters training field was sunken, over 3 times the size of Sabayati Archipelago. Year-round, Marine officers would take turns serving as instructors here. Who you'd encounter depended entirely on luck. From his vantage point, Michael quickly spotted the only female recruit in the field. Stella was sweating profusely as she struggled through push-ups at the tail end of a Marine squad. Though giving it her all, she was still half as fast as the other Marines. Michael stroked his chin. Tonight, he should continue using Holy Light to heal Stella. 3 days ago, she could barely do a single push-up, let alone keep up with training. After all, how healthy could a wandering singer really be? But now, most of Stella's chronic ailments and aftereffects had been cured by the holy light. Well, if it isn't Sengoku's cocky little brat. Finally decided to return to Marineford. Just as Michael was deep in thought, a boisterous old man's voice rang out behind him. Accompanying the voice, was the whistling sound of a fist cutting through air. Every alarm in Michael's mind went off as he pushed his body to its limits. He jerked his head and torso sharply to the right as a fist grazed past his hair. While the punch wouldn't have seriously hurt him, nobody enjoys being hit for no reason. Having dodged, Michael turned to see a burly old man nearly 3 meters tall with graying hair. Missing his punch, the old man didn't pursue but leaned against the nearby railing instead. Recognizing the old man, Michael couldn't help rolling his eyes. "Old man Garp, of course it's you. Only you would go around testing Marine officers with your fists. I worry for your descendants. Oh wait, even Dragon couldn't stand you, joined the Marines then quit." Garp mimicked Michael by rolling his eyes too. "None of your business, you little punk." His slacking skills were nearly on par with Michael's own. The pressure was real. "My point is, Gion has to manage the chaos of Sabayati. She can't properly train both you and the girl." Garp thumped his chest emphatically. "But I'm different. You said it yourself, I'm free. I can train you both." Michael actually considered Garp's proposal seriously. Despite the old man's eccentric thought process and unconventional ways, in mentoring newcomers, only Zephyr surpassed Garp in the entire Marines. Their greatest common trait was, both had reached Admiral-level prowess purely through physical skills and hockey. For building foundational skills, they were second to none. Because no matter how powerful a devil fruit was, it still relied on physical prowess. Just like how Ace's combat skills fell far short of Blackbeard's, take away his devil fruit ability and it led to his swift defeat. Old man Garp, gotta admit, that's actually a solid proposal. Michael's strength had recently reached a bottleneck, urgently needing a breakthrough. Garp was indeed one of the most suitable candidates. Just as Michael and Garp reached an agreement, the bright sunny sky unexpectedly began to darken, gradually obscuring the sunlight. When Michael looked up, an unusually large shadow had already spread across the horizon. Within it, lurked a destructive killing intent. As if a natural disaster was about to descend. 9/8, 1:54 p.m. Ranveer Singh, Chapter 7. "Damn it, old man Garp, look over there." Michael tugged at Garp's sleeve. "What the hell is that thing coming our way? Is it some weird weather phenomenon from the Grand Line? Why does it feel like it's heading straight for Marineford?" Garp brow furrowed instantly. Following Michael's gaze, he unleashed his observation hockey. The moment his observation hockey made contact with that ominous shadow, his face darkened. "Damn it, it's that bastard Shiki." Even after Roger turned himself in, what the hell is this crazy lion up to now? Garp gritted his teeth so hard they nearly cracked. He turned to Michael and barked, "You go inform Sengoku. I'll hold off Shiki." Without hesitation, Michael spread his angelic wings and shot toward Marineford headquarters building. "Michael, you really need to get stronger, and fast. The monsters of the sea are only going to multiply." Muttering to himself, Garp steeled his resolve and roared at the Marine officers and soldiers in the training grounds. "Enemy attack. Everyone evacuate immediately, and warn anyone you see along the way." Then he spun around and dashed toward the coastline. That bastard Shiki was actually planning to assault Marineford directly. This island wasn't just the Marine headquarters, it housed countless officers and soldiers, as well as the families of Marines living in Marineford. If Shiki succeeded, the casualties would be unimaginable. But even at his peak, Garp couldn't guarantee he could defeat Shiki without casualties and destruction. After all, a one-on-one duel was one thing. But waging war and slaughter? That was something else entirely. The former only concerned individual life and death, but the latter involved countless lives. So, Garp had sent Michael to alert Sengoku, intending to combine their strength and stop Shiki at the outermost coastal defenses. Marine Headquarters, Sengoku Office. Sengoku, just starting his day, had barely picked up his pen and signed off on 3 routine Marine documents when, crash. The window behind him shattered inward as someone burst through it. That someone was Michael. Tucking his wings slightly, Michael stood up and shouted at Sengoku. "Old man, stop burying your head in those damn papers. Shiki's here, he's already closing in on Marineford outer defenses." Sengoku, who had been hunched over his desk scribbling away, snapped his head up at Michael's words. "Shiki, are you sure?" It was Garp who confirmed it. Michael's face was frantic, his tone a far cry from his usual laziness. "Garp already heading for the outer defenses. You need to move, now. With that damn devil fruit ability of his, even if Garp can beat him, he won't be able to stop Shiki from wrecking Marineford." Without a second thought, Sengoku stood up decisively. Michael, relay my orders to all officers at headquarters immediately. Garp and I will handle Shaki, everyone else is to evacuate as fast as possible and protect the civilians. Without waiting for Michael nod, he leapt straight out the window, heading directly toward the coastline. At this moment, Sengoku's face was filled with fury. That madman Shaki, has he lost his mind over Roger execution, throwing his life away? Attention, everyone, by order of Admiral Sengoku. All personnel are to stay clear of Marineford outer defensive perimeter. Gather all available forces and evacuate civilians to safe zones immediately. Shaki the Golden Lion is attacking. I repeat, Shaki the Golden Lion is attacking. Michael spread his wings and flew at top speed to every corner of the headquarters, ensuring the Marines swiftly carried out their orders. His iconic white wings were actually quite famous within Marineford, though not necessarily for good reasons. He was often labeled things like, the biggest nepotism hire in Marine HQ. But everyone knew, before being transferred to Vice Admiral Gion command, Michael had served as Admiral Sengoku messenger. No matter how much of a nepo hire he wouldn't recklessly relay false orders during an emergency. So in this critical moment, no one questioned him, they simply acted on his instructions. As Michael rushed out of the headquarters building, he spotted Stella running toward him. Her golden hair was disheveled and her emerald green eyes brimmed with panic. As a Logia-type user of the cloud fruit, she could already sense the terrifying waves of malice emanating from the massive storm clouds in the distance. Michael, what's happening? Those storm clouds, they feel horrifying. Don't just stand there. You heard the orders, evacuate to safety now. Shaki is attacking. At the mention of Shaki, Stella Emerald eyes widened sharply. Shaki the Golden Lion was undeniably powerful, though not quite the strongest. But as the captain of the Flying Pirates, infamous for pillaging, slaughtering and every imaginable atrocity, his cruelty was legendary, enough to make children tremble at his name. Without hesitation, she nodded at Michael and immediately turned to leave. Stella knew her limits, right now, she'd only be dead weight. But she could still contribute. As she retreated to safety, she activated her Logia powers, transforming into rolling clouds to carry the elderly, weak and injured who couldn't move fast enough. Watching Stella leave, Michael turned back toward the chaos. Damn it, how could I forget? A week before Roger execution, Shaki launched a solo assault on Marineford. He was torn. Even at his peak, Shaki stood no chance against both Garp and Sengoku. But neither Garp nor Sengoku could fully stop Shaki and the devastating power of his float fruit. This battle would become one of Marineford's greatest defeat in history. Countless Marines and civilians would die and at least half of Marineford would be reduced to ruins. It was this very battle that elevated the float fruit to the same catastrophic level as the tremor fruit, a force of nature. But Michael had just resolved to rebel against the world government. How could he stand by and let his future stronghold be destroyed? But Kizaru was away on a mission and Aokiji was at Tsubayati Archipelago. Akainu, Kizaru and Aokiji, all three will return to headquarters in few days. Even if they notified Kizaru now, it would be too late for him to arrive in time. Thinking this, Michael took a deep breath and exhaled slowly. Then he soared into the air. Evacuating the entire Marineford population into the town would be an overwhelming task. No one noticed. High in the sky, a pair of pure white wings cut through the skies. Flying in the opposite direction. 9/8, 1:55 p.m. Ranveer Singh, Chapter 8. Marineford, Outer Defenses. Beneath the gloomy clouds, a man with wild golden hair resembling a lion, stood towering in the sky. Upon closer inspection, one would realize, those so-called clouds were actually shadows cast by something else. Jagged boulders, seawater condensed into spheres, countless metal objects, wrecked ships, even an entire small island. All of it floated in the sky as if gravity had ceased to exist, enough to blot out the sun. And this man was known as Shaki the Golden Lion, a user of the Paramesha-type float fruit, a being capable of creating natural disasters, rivaling even Whitebeard in infamy. I can't believe it. I refuse to believe it. A man like Roger would willingly give up his life. Damn you, Roger, how could you get captured? Didn't you say that the freest man on the sea is the king of the pirates? What kind of freedom is there if you're going to be executed? His muttering escalated into a heart-wrenching roar, veins bulging on his face like a madman as he screamed that name once more. Galdi, Roger. Meanwhile, on the distant shoreline, Garp had already arrived. Hearing the furious roar from above, his expression darkened. Shaki, you damn pirate, why aren't you out there seizing territory with your crew? Instead, you come here brazenly to Marineford, have you lost your mind? Garp. Only after his outburst did Golden Lion Shaki seem to register Garp's voice. It wasn't that he was arrogant enough to disregard Garp, it was just that nearly all his focus was on controlling his devil fruit powers. The ammunition he had gathered with the float fruit behind him was nearing the limit of his control. Perfect timing. Try and stop me if you dare. Ha 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 ha. Shiki laughed maniacally. This measly headquarters, today, I'll bury this island alongside Roger. With that, he drew the two swords at his waist, Kogarashi, and Odo. Then, crossing his arms, he dove down from the skies. Slash wave. Two ferocious flying slashes tore across the sea, hurtling toward Garp. At the same time, the objects affected by the float fruit began launching light cannonballs toward the distant marine headquarters. Garp took a deep breath. This was Golden Lion Shiki at the peak of his power, one of the most formidable figures on the seas. Garp wasn't afraid of him, but the marine headquarters behind him, along with the weaker soldiers and civilians, wouldn't stand a chance. Yet Shiki's slashes were already upon him, leaving no time for further thought. First, throw a punch. Then ask questions while punching. If that's not enough, throw another punch. Armament hockey instantly enveloped both of his arms. Leaping forward, Garp shattered Shiki's slash wave with just two ordinary punches. But when he looked up, he saw the rain of debris crashing down toward the marine headquarters like meteors. Damn it! Cursing under his breath, Garp didn't hesitate, he leapt into the air, compressing and charging his hockey. A black flash streaked across the sky. Galaxy impact. With a single strike, an overwhelming shockwave erupted from sheer force alone. Wherever he passed, the rubble and metal that Shiki had weaponized were instantly reduced to dust. But it wasn't enough. Seeing Garp go all out, Shiki decided to stop testing the waters. He had only used 1/10 of his ammunition earlier, now, he intended to unleash everything floating behind him directly onto Marineford. In an instant, it was like a calamity descending from the heavens. Shiki, are you really planning to take Marineford down with you? Garp gritted his teeth. I might not be able to stop your assault, but I'll give it everything I've got, to kill you. As soon as the words left his mouth, another fist of love was launched. However, it wasn't aimed at Shiki, instead, it was still focused on minimizing the aerial bombardment Marineford would suffer. Buddha impact. Garp turned his head just as an incredibly wide golden shockwave swept over him. Once again, it cleared a vacuum in the sky. It was Sengoku, who had rushed over and immediately activated his Buddha form. After Garp and Sengoku's two massive AoE attacks, the rubble, steel, and other debris had long turned to dust, falling into the sea. But the bombardment wasn't done, and what remained was the most destructive part of all, seawater. An enormous volume of seawater now came crashing down toward Marineford, its destructive force no different from a catastrophic tsunami. Sengoku's face turned ashen. There was no time for him to launch another Buddha impact. It was clear that under this flood, less than a third of Marineford's facilities would survive. The buildings were one thing, but inside those buildings were still countless personnel who hadn't evacuated in time. The casualties would be horrifying, predictable, yet unimaginable. But at this critical moment, a figure with pure white wings streaked across the sky like lightning. Holy shit, old man Garp, and you, geezer, what the hell kind of mess have you gotten into? I kinda regret coming to help now. Sengoku was utterly stunned. Michael had appeared right between Marineford and the cascading wall of seawater. Michael, what are you doing? Why aren't you running? This isn't a fight you should be involved in yet. Cut the crap, old man. Michael bared his teeth and roared. My home's about to be wrecked. If I just sit back and take it, I'm not a man, I'm a damn turtle. The moment he finished speaking, countless white holy flames began spreading outward from his body. Perhaps influenced by his emotions, the usually sacred and purifying flames now seemed unusually agitated, even tinged with a faint hint of crimson. As the flames rapidly expanded and multiplied under Michael's control, they formed several massive round shields positioned directly in the path of the terrifying seawater onslaught. The moment the seawater touched the holy flames, vast clouds of white steam erupted into the sky. Holy flames, burning everything, combustible or not. Seawater was nothing in comparison. But, isn't there a bit too much of this damn water? Is that bastard Shiki trying to drown the whole damn Marines here? Michael had to stand beneath the flame shields to maintain their output, and this kind of overloaded holy flame exertion was a massive drain on stamina. Even with his near-limitless endurance, Michael was starting to feel the strain. The surging seawater carried over a dozen sailing ships, using the force of the waves to break through 2 layers of Michael's holy flame shields in succession. Of course, a considerable portion of the attack was dissipated in the process. The remaining few ships, still borne by the raging waters, crashed violently against the final shield. Hiss. The sounds of evaporation and combustion rose and fell incessantly, as an unprecedented density of steam completely enveloped the entire Marine headquarters. 9/8, 1:57 p.m. Ranveer Singh, Chapter 9. Mythical. After Sengoku transformed into his Buddha form, his massive body produced a voice as resonant as a great bell. The entire sea rippled under the roar of his fury. Meanwhile, Garp narrowed his eyes and charged toward Shiki with even greater force. Unlike the rage burning in Sengoku and Garp, Shiki's expression now mirrored Garp from moments earlier. The fact that Sengoku and Garp, both individually on par with him in combat, could dismantle part of his float fruit assault didn't surprise him in the slightest. In fact, those mountains of rock and steel had been deliberately sent toward Garp and Sengoku. To truly make the Marine pay a devastating price, he had spread out his attack. Though he had come prepared to die, Shiki hadn't completely lost his sanity. He had specifically chosen this moment when the Marine headquarters had only Garp and Sengoku left as their strongest fighters. By dispersing and expanding the float fruit range, its power naturally diminished. If those Logia users had been present, not only would he have been finished, but he might not even have been able to leave the Marine with a lasting lesson. But, who the hell was this winged freak unleashing terrifying white flames? Since when did the Navy have such a powerful rookie in their ranks? What's his deal? Is he a flame fruit user? But those flames aren't yellow. And what's with the wings? Could he be one of Vegapunk's biological weapons? To think they've advanced this far. Before Shiki could finish muttering to himself, a figure shot out from the massive steam. It was Mythical, the one who had just nullified his final seawater assault. Hovering midair, Mythical locked eyes with the man known as Golden Lion. Arrogance, malice, fury, truly, this was one of the apex figures of the sea. Even now, sandwiched between Garp and Sengoku, he showed not a hint of retreat. If not for the double debuff of being in a movie special and half mad on death's door, pre-time skip Luffy taking down Shiki. Yeah, right, but respecting his strength was one thing, calling him out was another. Hey, you crazy old bastard, what kind of lunatic chucks giant water bombs at people's homes for fun? Are you out of your damn mind? Oh wait, you literally are. Who the hell stays sane with a ship rudder lodged in their skull? Mythical spat, making his contempt for the old lion crystal clear. Mythical, are you alright? Amid the battle, Sengoku caught sight of Mythical unharmed and finally let out a sigh of relief. At the same time, he began reassessing Mythical's abilities. He had assumed this young man, whom he treated like a son, had hidden strength but nothing too outrageous. Yet here he was, already capable of intervening in the most elite battles of the sea. Mythical was only 18, wasn't he? A thought flashed through Sengoku's mind. A future admiral might just have Mythical's name on it. Old man, Garp-san. You two can definitely catch that golden lion, right? Mythical shouted before landing back on the ground. I won't cheer you on, I'm exhausted after all that. You better give me a raise. You damn brat, you had plenty of energy when you were cursing earlier. And now you're slacking off. Even in the heat of battle, Sengoku couldn't resist calling out Mythical's laziness. Though he complained, deep down, he was immensely grateful for Mythical's presence. Truth be told, both Sengoku and Garp had been ready to close their eyes, unable to bear witnessing the destruction of Marineford. Had Mythical not appeared in time, the Marine headquarters would have suffered unprecedented devastation. A massive tsunami crashing down from the sky, at the very least, half of Marineford would have been obliterated. But now, that threat had been completely neutralized. With that worry gone, the two of them could go all out to capture Shiki. At their peak, Sengoku and Garp were more than capable of taking down Shiki alive. Especially since Shiki didn't seem the least bit interested in fleeing. And so, the battle between the three top-tier fighters escalated into a fierce aerial clash. Garp and Sengoku coordinated seamlessly, ensuring Shiki couldn't take a single step closer to Marineford. With their concerns alleviated, if they, 2 against 1, still let Shiki slip, they might as well commit seppuku out of shame. Hey, you brat over there, just who the hell are you? Shiki shouted during a brief lull in the fight. Who am I? Mythical folded his wings slightly, watching the battle with leisurely amusement. Just an insignificant little Marine lieutenant commander, that's all. TCH, talented, yet knows how to stay low-key. Shiki remarked, parrying Garp and Sengoku's attacks. You Marines really lucked out with this rare seedling. Without waiting for a response, Shiki suddenly surged with power. His swords, Oto and Kogarashi, slashed wildly through the air. Lion thousand slashes. Countless massive flying slashes engulfed both Sengoku and Garp. Shiki understood, at this point, words were meaningless. Only an all-out battle to the death could satisfy him. The powers of the float fruit were truly terrifying. If Shiki at his peak had truly wanted to escape, even Garp and Sengoku together wouldn't have been enough to stop him. Hell, even if another Prime Zephyr showed up, they still wouldn't have been able to hold him. But this Shiki had come for a suicide mission. Escape, that word didn't exist in his vocabulary. The righteous 2 versus 1 battle raged on through the night. The sun set, then rose again. Under the morning glow, the sea shimmered with light and finally, Garp succeeded in clasping a pair of sea stone handcuffs around Shiki's wrists. Of course, this was only a temporary measure. For a devil fruit user of Shiki's caliber, a single pair of cuffs wouldn't suffice, a full set of sea stone restraints would be necessary. Michael gazed at the coastline bathed in dawn. It was utterly ravaged. It was impossible to imagine the scale of destruction if the battle had taken place any closer to Marineford. But this was already the best possible outcome. After all, Akainu and Aokiji had fought for 10 whole days on Punk Hazard. In the end, even the terrain and climate were transformed. One half became a sea of fire, the other half a glacier. In the original work, half of Marineford was destroyed, with countless casualties. Yet, with Michael's intervention, the Shiki the Golden Lion attack, which should have been devastating, ended with 0 casualties, a miracle. 9/8, 1:59 p.m. Ranveer Singh, Chapter 10. Wahahaha, Michael, we really owe this one to you. Garp, wearing a tattered uniform that was barely holding together, let out a boisterous laugh while slapping Michael on the head. That strength, Michael rolled his eyes. Just how strong was this old man Garp? There was definitely a handprint-shaped bruise forming on his shoulder now. At times like these, Michael couldn't help but wonder, just how absurdly high was the physical threshold of humans in this world. Standing before Garp, who was nearly 3 meters tall, Michael looked almost like a tiny shrimp in comparison. Watching as Shiki was escorted onto Garp's warship by a group of marine officers, Michael turned to Garp and asked, "Old man Garp, will Shiki be executed too?" Of course not. A monster like Shiki belongs in the 6th level of Impel Down. Imprisoned, why not just kill him outright and eliminate the threat for good? Killing Shiki would only bring that threat back to the seas in another form, Garp replied, his expression turning serious as he dropped his usual grin. A Paramesha-type devil fruit user of his caliber is powerful enough to create natural disasters. If we execute him, the float fruit power will simply reincarnate somewhere else in the world. If a civilian or a marine ate it, that'd be one thing. But what if another ruthless pirate got their hands on it? What if they became an even younger, even more dangerous version of Shiki? So, as long as we have Shiki under control, the safest course of action is to keep him alive as long as possible, to slow down the cycle of such a powerful devil fruit. Garp's reasoning wasn't wrong. In fact, it was one of the Marines' guiding principles. But there were always exceptions. What if the float fruit user had been Roger instead of Shiki? Garp glanced at Michael, then shrugged without answering. But his silence said everything. When it came to Roger, even if it meant risking the loss of a powerful devil fruit, execution would still be the chosen path. Roger's influence was far beyond what a single devil fruit could compare to. Michael sighed inwardly. No wonder Ace had such rotten luck. His whole life was overshadowed by his father's legacy. Thinking of Ace, Michael couldn't help but glance at Garp again. This old man had trained Ace relentlessly from the start, hoping to make him a Marine, probably as a way to protect him, to ensure he wouldn't meet the same fate as Roger. But in the end, nothing had changed. For a moment, Michael actually felt a little sorry for this silly old man. His own son was a revolutionary, his grandson and adopted grandson were both pirates. This whole family didn't have a single responsible member to speak of. Thankfully, the monkey family had a hereditary lack of common sense. If they were even slightly more emotionally intelligent, they'd probably have died young from sheer frustration. You two, stop chatting, Sengoku interjected, having finished organizing relief efforts for the townspeople and recruits. Garp, escort Shiki to Impel Down. Then, his eye twitched as he glanced at Michael, who had acted decisively earlier but was now just lazing around, before pointing at him and adding, "And you're going with him?" "Right, it's about time. After delivering Shiki to Impel Down, let's pick up Roger on the way. Then we'll head straight to Logatown." Garp flashed an exaggerated grin, giving a thumbs up in acknowledgement. With that, he threw an arm around Michael's shoulders and steered him toward his Vice Admiral flagship. Despite the generational gap, they looked like two buddies hanging out. Michael glanced up at Garp with mild exasperation. This boisterous act was just a cover for the loneliness hidden in his eyes. "Michael, when we get to Logatown, keep your eyes wide open," Garp said seriously. "Witness the end of an era." Michael nodded solemnly. This journey marked the conclusion of an old era, and the dawn of a new one. Michael, want some rice crackers? I swiped them from Sengoku's office. Old man Garp, I don't expect much from you, but at least try to be professional. Michael rolled his eyes at the carefree vice admiral. The marine hero, a vice admiral, and all you do is steal snacks from your colleagues. Let me try some. He nearly forgot, he wasn't exactly the picture of reliability either. Oh well, no room for double standards here. He took the rice cracker, devoured it in a few bites and swallowed. Then his gaze drifted toward the eerily calm waters of the calm belt. Over the years, he'd crossed this stretch countless times. Yet the surreal sight never failed to amaze him, a testament to the creator's wonders. Different worlds, different rules. Different perspectives shaped by those rules. A sea with no wind, no currents, it had long since shattered his earth-born understanding of physics, forcing him to rebuild from the wreckage. The journey to Impel Down still had some way to go, and Michael was starting to feel bored. His personality was cat-like, playful yet sensitive, endlessly curious but easily distracted. Just when Michael was at his most listless, the world always seemed to throw him a curveball. The mirror-like surface of the sea suddenly shattered. From the towering waves, an enormous sea king burst forth, diving straight toward Garp's flagship. Holy, what the hell? Since when do mantis shrimp get this big? Michael smacked his lips. The translucent flesh of the several-meter-long mantis shrimp revealed its tantalizing, orange-red roe. Mantis shrimp, at their plumpest between spring and summer. Without hesitation, he spread his wings and shot toward the creature. Holy flames erupted from his hand, instantly coalescing into a blade. With a reverse grip, Michael drove the blade into the shrimp's spine, severing its nerves in one strike. Then, using the shrimp's own momentum, he split it cleanly down the back with his fiery weapon. With a thunderous crash, the massive mantis shrimp lay motionless on the deck. Tell the kitchen we're having a feast today. Garp cheered, having watched the spectacle with amusement. Marine soldiers poured onto the deck, ready to carve up the enormous catch. The shrimp was far too big for the kitchen, but Garp wasn't one for formalities. He set up a massive grill right there on the deck. Charcoal-grilled mantis shrimp, now that was genius. Even Garp took out a portion and delivered it to the makeshift seastone prison cell that had been temporarily set up on the deck. Shaki inside the cage didn't stand on ceremony either, reaching out to grab and eat it immediately.